If you can't do malacha before Havdalah, how do you likely there Havdalah? That's a logistical question. But Lamaisa, that's a problem. But the Gemara continues. Marava, they said, Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chayil, and they did malacha. They said did malacha. Good. Now this, of course, sounds like our Baruch Hamavdil. But Rashi says, but don't forget to make Havdalah al-Kais. It's still Chiyav of Havdalah. Then the Gemara adds, Rav Ashi, Hevi oime Baruch Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chayil, u'mesaltin on silti. He said Baruch Hamavdil and he chopped wood. Now, it's interesting, it's the same concept with a different name. Like, why does man have to say two of the same stories? So you notice there's a difference in the Lashon. The first statement is Omrina, and we all said it. The second statement is Rav Huna said Baruch Hamavdil. It's very possible the Gemara is telling us a chiddush. Not only does Baruch Hamavdil help, but if I say it, I can be moitzi all of you, like a regular Havdalah. And indeed, the Rav in Reish Sadik Tes Yud Ches says if Nashim don't know how to make their own Havdalah, they don't want to make their Havdalah, they don't have a Ma'ariv, they don't know the Nusach Baruch HaMavdil, let a man say it and be moitzi the women. So we see from the Gemara Baruch HaMavdil helps, and even Shemei Koina works with Baruch HaMavdil. But Rabbi say this that learns a different pshat. And that basically is that Lamaisa, you can't do malacha until you make Havdalah ala kois, period. And as the Rif says it, you can't do any malacha without Havdalah ala kois. What's the second Gemara talking about? Is Hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. So the way the Ran explains, the question is, what is the nusach of Havdalah? Is it, you have to say Hamav ben kodesh l'chol or l'chol amim, 3 Havdalahs? The Gemara says no, one's enough. Baruch Atah Hashem ala kois, Hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol, that's all you need. You don't need the long Havdalah, 1 Havdalah is enough. But like the Rif, it's klar v'tag, it's asa to do malacha before Havdalah al hakois. Now, I was very tempted to say, what's the machlokes Tali? And Rashi holds heck is enough, and the Rif holds you have to have Havdalah al hakois. So I was thinking it's Masig Midvash. The Rif would hold that before you make Havdalah, there's some part of Shabbos remaining. We'll soon see what. But Shabbos remains. To be matam malacha on Shabbos, you need a richtige Havdalah, Havdalah lakois. Rashi holds Shabbos is completely over. You're allowed to eat chametz on Pesach. We'll soon see you're allowed to drink on Yom Kippur. Shabbos is over. So why can you do malacha? Because Havdalah asses malacha. If it asses malacha, Heka ba'alma is enough to be matir. You have to make Havdalah, mitzvah Havdalah. You'll do it when you get around to it. It's not a stira. And the emes is, I know you're wondering, what do you mean Shabbos remained? I thought Shabbos is over. That's what I would have said also. But the Oila Shabbos and Sivkot and Vav, the Levush and the end of Reish Samach Gimel, the Buchach and Reish Sadik Tes, all seem to say that some part of Shabbos remains until you make Havdalah ala kois. To quote the Oila Shabbos, Afilu mishatechshach, it's also to do malacha, kivan shloi hivdal adayin, chal kedusha Shabbos olav v'asa b'malacha. And the Mishnah Berurah in Sivkot and Lamed Gimel quotes Kamat this Lashon. So it's very possible that some part of Shabbos remains according to the Rif. Oy bazoi, you need Havdalah ala kois. Rashi would hold, no, Shabbos is over. Why can you do malacha? Because of Havdalah. So for that, the Heka helps for now, and Havdalah will be later. However, there's a Brisker Rav and the Ram Hilchos Shabbos that learns Punk Fakert. And he learns later that the Rif holds that Shabbos is over. But there's a special Issa to do malacha before Havdalah. No, you have to have Havdalah to be matam malacha. Because the Chazal said you can't do malacha for Havdalah, you need a real Havdalah. Rashi holds there's a little trace of Shabbos that remains. For that, a heck is enough. Ayin sham v'timtza. But I was thinking is, and that's really but the point as we go weiter to apply it lamaisa, the Mishnah Berurah brings that part of Shabbos remains. And a little later he brings the lashon of Rashi. There's a hekel alavos hamelech. Could be, it's not really a stira. Shabbos is really over. But for some reason Chazal said don't do malacha before Havdalah. So the Rif says that's so much of a reason that you need Havdalah lakos. Rashi and many Rishonim say, no, Shabbos is over, it's all Shabbos. You decide to end Shabbos, okay, that's your decision. Now you want to do malacha, something you need as a heker. Why heker? I'll tell you. Either als kedusha Shabbos, the first malacha is after some Havdalah, or it's like we said earlier, you're not allowed to eat, like eat before Ner Chanukah, before davening, before b'dikas chametz. So for that, a heker b'alma is enough. But at the end of the day, let's not forget, there's a machlekes gedoylei rishonim. Are you allowed to do malacha before Havdalah lakos? Like the Rif, no. Like Rashi, yes. How do we paskin? The Shulchan Aruch in the end of Reish Tzadik Tes is very clear that he paskins like Rashi. Twice the Ber Agoyla points out that Mechaber paskins like Rashi. You could do malacha after Baruch HaMavdil even without Shem Umalchus. So basically, this is the Minig Yisrael. We have 3 Havdalah alternatives. Of course, Havdalah lakos, Atuchain Antanu, and minimally Baruch HaMavdil without Shem Umalchus. But don't forget, either is Matim Malacha. But to be Yotzei Havdalah, the Deraisa or the Drabbana, wherever you hold, for that you need Havdalah lakos. So indeed, believe it or not, it's Svei Dinim. There's a mitzvah of Havdalah, that's one mitzvah. There's an issa of Malacha before Havdalah, which is not because it's Shabbos, and for that Heka Ba'alma, without Shem Malchus helps. Before we apply this specifically Lamaisa, I must mention a Shita of Beni Yerucham, the Beis Yosef, and our Simon. Our Simon today is Reish Tzadik Tes Sif Yud, 1 Bechaba and Ramah, but that's the whole sugya. The Beis Yosef says, you're not do Malacha before Havdalah, that's true, but only real malacha. And he gives very interesting examples, like oirik, sewing, or writing. But adlokis neris, or carrying, you're allowed to do without Havdalah. Like an in-between. You can't do malacha before Havdalah, but certain malacha, like adlokis neris, and haitzah you're allowed to. Freg the Beis Yosef, the Darkim Moshe, the Ramah, what kind of business is this? Malacha on Shabbos, Haitzah is also malacha on Shabbos, and so is Lakis Neris a malacha deraisa. What kind of chiluk is it? The Levush says it's a minik shtus, but Rabbi say for us it's masik midvash. And I saw the Taz Yivka and Tes says that because after the Zman of Haitzah Shabbos, it's Oy Shabbos. So it's not a question of Meleches Shabbos. It's a question of not doing malacha before Havdalah. For that, the definition of malacha is different. Look, the Rabbi Yerucham could say the Issa malacha is this malacha, not that. The Magen Avram also asked this, what kind of chiluk malacha? So he first quotes the Zoya, that's an Einish Gadol, not to do, the person does malacha before Havdalah lakos. Then he also mentions, I also should mention, some people are very makbid about this, not to do malacha until at least Atuchain Antana with Kedusha Uvolatzion that we say in Ma'ariv. People don't know this, but they grab the Zoya says, and the Paiskim quote this, try not to malacha until after Uvolatzion, it was the end of Ma'ariv. But then he says, this is Beni Yerucham, what pshat? So he says, we said earlier, because you ever wonder, if you hold you can't do any malacha before Havdalah, how do you have a Ner Havdalah? What, for the first person, Mechal Shabbos? Zokt, the Magen Avraham, maybe practically. We'll use their Beni Yerucham, be allowed to light Ner Havdalah before Havdalah. Now, I was thinking, it even has more pshat to it. If we understand the whole Issa of doing malacha before Havdalah is because of Havdalah, so it's very logical you're allowed to light the Ner Havdalah before Havdalah, especially because there is no other choice. Had it been Chilul Shabbos before Havdalah, so you can't make a Chiluk Ner Havdalah not. But since the Isser is doing Malacha before Havdalah because of Havdalah, so Tzarech Havdalah is definitely not a violation of this halacha. Okay, I saw some Rishonim say it's a tzairech or like eis lasis lashem. It's a very stark lashon. But the emphasis is if you understand that it's not chilul Shabbos, the Issa Malacha is because of Havdalah, then I could understand that if you're talking about doing Malacha to make a Ner Havdalah, there's no problem. But Lamaisa, at the end of the day, the Ramah, in the end of Reish Tzadik Tes, says, he quotes the Ben Yeruchim, Aval Ha'ika Kisvar HaRishayna. And that's why Lamaisa, we are careful not to do Malacha until after some type of Havdalah, and we're not mechalek between various Malachis. But what's interesting is the Ramah does say that there's a kula after Baruch Hu, you're allowed to do Malacha. Anayim and Amma, Baruch Hu. Now, why is Baruch Hu a deciding factor? I was thinking it's beautiful. Because if you look at the end of Reish Samach Aleph, the Shulchan Aruch says, when is it considered automatically Kabbalah Shabbos? People Makabal Shabbos, whenever you want, but when is it considered officially a Kabbalah Shabbos? So the Shulchan Aruch, when the Tzibah says Baruch Hu. Then he says, okay, if you say Mizmay Shir, it's also Kabbalah Shabbos. Mr. Brewer says, if you say Boy Chala, like the Minig Ari, to say Kabbalah Shabbos also. But what's Shat Baruch Hu? Peretz is very pashut. Baruch Hu is the beginning of Ma'ariv. That's the beginning of a new day. No, if it's a new day, that means it's no longer Friday, it's Shabbos. So let's use the same logic. If you say Baruch Hu Matzoi Shabbos for Ma'ariv, you're obviously changing location. So that's enough of a Heka Ba'alma, that you are now changing location. So now to return to our original Chakira, it comes out beautiful. It's hard to believe that Malacha is mutter because of Havdalah, because really once it's the Zman and you decided to leave Shabbos, it's no longer Shabbos. So then we probably could say that the Havdalah is what asks Malacha, and therefore Havdalah is Mata Malacha, whether it's Havdalah L'Kais L'Chatchila, or even the minimum, Baruch Hamavdil, even without Shema Malchus. So now to apply this more specifically, question that we began with, someone daven Ma'ariv in Shul, and said Atachain Antonu, instead of Olatzian, he wants to drive home. Is that L'Chatchila to drive home after a full package Ma'ariv? The answer is, it's Mutter L'Halacha, L'Chatchila, but I can't say L'Chaladeis. Light the Rif, and the Sharatzian and Sivkot in the Nalav says, Harbe Rishonim Machmim light the Rif. You can't do Malacha until after Havdalah Alakais. The Torah Shabbos, Sivkot and Tezvov, and Yedua, the Stipler and others were Makbid, not do Malacha until after Havdalah Alakais. So if someone asks me, could I drive home after Ma'ariv? The answer is Halacha, yes. Shulchan Aruch is Mekel. But is it a L'Kula Alma? I can't say L'Kula Alma. What I found very interesting, there are some shitas in Rishonim that after Atachan Antanu can't do Malacha. You want to do Malacha? Say Baruch HaMavdil. So it sounds a little strange. Atachan Antanu in the Shemini Esrei is not good enough. You need a Baruch HaMavdil. But it could be that Baruch HaMavdil is a more specific bracha of Havdalah. Loi mi boy light the rush that you say Baruch HaMavdil b'Shem Malchus. That's a real Havdalah. And Shemini Esrei is just to add it to the bracha. But even like Rashi, Lamaisa Baruch HaMavdil is a distinct form of Heker. Maybe more than Atachain Antonu. But what's interesting, we spoke once about this question, the Chasam Sofer and the Tshuvas in Orchaim, Siman Chaf Aleph, says you should have a mind not to be Yoitza with Kiddush or Havdalah in davening. Wait to be Yoitza Kiddush and Havdalah with a kais of wine. So we once asked, when we learned this the first time, according to the Chasam Sofer, how do you do Malacha after Ma'ariv before Havdalah Kais? You're having a mind not to be Yoitza with Atachain Antanu, so how can you do Malacha? So now with the kasha is not so shver. Because we could say, you don't want to be yoytz the mitzvah of Havdalah with Atachain Antanu. But you do want it to be enough of a heker, l'lavos es hamelech. So you could say, it's not, I'm not yoytz Havdalah with Atachain Antanu, but it's certainly enough of a heker. If it's enough of a heker, it can be a heker to mata malacha, even before Havdalah alakos. Next question, also obviously a very common question. The husband comes home from shul, he ready daven ma'ariv, he said, Atachein Antanu. He tells his wife, no, let's go, get Havdalah ready. So Isha Kshera goes and wants to light the Ner Havdalah. Is that right? The answer is that's wrong. L'choladeyis. If the Isha who typically doesn't daven ma'ariv, there's no Havdalah but tefillah, and she didn't say Baruch HaMavdil, so she's violating a din, HaGemara, L'kula Alma, Asa to do malacha before Havdalah. Let's not forget. The question is why. That's our shir today. But everybody agrees it's a Gemara in two places and a Mechaba. You can't do malacha before Havdalah. So the Isha generally has a problem. They don't daven ma'ariv, even though it's interesting. The Rav says that women should be careful to daven ma'ariv on Matzai Shabbos just to get Havdalah b'tefillah. But that's not the minig, because we see it's not the minig. But an Isha that wants to light the Ner Havdalah should not do it before Havdalah, or at least the Baruch HaMavdil. Now, of course, we could defend the minig that maybe the Isha relies on the Beni Yeruchim. I don't think you ever heard of Beni Yeruchim, but there is a Beni Yeruchim. But this is why the Magen Avraham in the end of Reish Sadik Tes says you have to be Doirish Barabim, that women that didn't have a ma'ariv should at least say Baruch HaMavdil before they do malacha. In fact, some have a minig, I should mention, that they're always makbid to have a ner burning by the Chazin's Amid, and Shabbos you put neres but it burnt out. They will light neres for ma'ariv after Baruch Hu. The man. Now, that's interesting because he's doing malacha. So how can we justify that minig? One or two reasons. Either they rely on the Beni Yeruchim that neres, halakha neres is mutter before anything, or they rely on the Baruch Hu being the Hekab Ba'amal like we saw in Shulchan Aruch. Nashim, as we said, should have a ma'ariv, but they don't. There's an interesting ha'ara if what the women say, Gotfan Avram, does that help as a Baruch HaMavdil? It's not a Zichan Havdalah Mamish, but there's enough of a differentiation. Maybe that's at least like a Baruch HaMavdil, and that would allow them to do Hadlakas Neiros before the Havdalah Alakos. Consider a question the person needs to do malacha in middle of Shalashuddis. He has to put on the lights, whatever it is, he has to do malacha during Suda Shlishis. But if he after this man already, so the emes is, can he say Baruch HaMavdil and do malacha? That's our sugya. Like the Rif, it won't work. But the Shulchan Aruch, Rashi, he could say Baruch HaMavdil and then do malacha. The problem is now he's going to bench, because he didn't bench yet. Can he say Ritzei if he says Baruch HaMavdil? So the Rav and Mr. Brewer at the end of Reish Samach Gimel has a suffix. Once you said Baruch HaMavdil, your location is Oy Shabbos, how do you go say Ritzei? Now we wonder, what's the suffix? Mr. Brewer says Sarachin. What's the suffix? Isn't it Pasha once you say Baruch HaMavdil, it's Oy Shabbos? So maybe, like we explained, maybe Taka, the fact that this is only a Hekab Alma, but you're not really making a full Havdalah, maybe there's still a trace of Shabbos, but Lamaisa, the Mr. Brewer does leave it as a suffix, and out suffix, brachas, the Minig Yisrael, if you said Ritzei in benching, if you said Baruch HaMavdil during Shalosh Shuddis, and then you have to bench, we do not say Ritzei. The Chsam Seifa in the Gilyon and Shulchan Aruch says, so therefore, don't say Baruch HaMavdil before you bench. You lose a Ritzei. I mean, you have a Chalois Chiyuv Ritzei. Okay, the emphasis, the Talmidei Chsam Seifa were more makel. If you have to, you're allowed to say Baruch HaMavdil. But certainly, if someone could avoid saying Baruch HaMavdil and say Ritzei K'halacha, that's better. But if he did say Ritzei, he did say Baruch HaMavdil, then he cannot say Ritzei in benching. Next question, also a common question. Especially in yeshivas and camps, they typically bench by Shalosh Shuddis with a kais. No one drinks the kais by Shalosh Shuddis. They bring it to Beis Medrash and they make Havdalah and Beis Medrash with that same kais. Can you bring the kais from Shalosh Shuddis to the Beis Medrash right after benching? Why not? It's not muktzah. You're not carrying. The problem is it's achana. You're being meichin from Shabbos to Matzai Shabbos. So if you look at the El Yerabas Yivkot and Chav Beis, he says that you can't do malacha before Havdalah. He doesn't like the the Reini Ruchim, this malach is mutter, zasa. But he says, hachana is mutter without anything. And Mr. Brewer's lashon is, hachana is mutter, kivan shen is kaddish hayoim, since the day is over, you're allowed to do hachana without anything. Now, they're not talking about Yom Tiv, but the svara seems to be, once the day is over, so hachana is mutter. Or better yet, the Chazal aser hachana from Yom Tiv to Yom Tiv, or from Shabbos to Motzei Shabbos, when it's the Tumah Shel Yom. But once the day is over, the Zman is over, you're allowed to do hachana without even the minimal l'chayra baruch hamavdil ben kodesh l'chayr. So oy bazoi, it seems that will justify the meaning of carrying the kais. It's only hachana, you're not carrying or doing malacha, and therefore that's mutter. The question is, should you be from and say baruch hamavdil? So if you benched already, you don't lose ritzei, but you know what you lose? You lose Shabbos. What do you have to lose Shabbos for? As long as you're keeping Shabbos, it's still Shabbos. How you allowed to do hachana? Teretz says hachana is not asa after this man. So you're doing an issa beheta. There's no issa. So you could tanz about the chasanas. You could make the hachana and not lose kedusha Shabbos. The Elef Lamogen Tafkov Tzadik Tes Sif Hey has an interesting ha'ara that he's talking about on Motzei Shabbos Shechal B'Yom Tiv. The women prepare the Suda for the Seder night or for whatever Yom Tiv is Motzei Shabbos. It's wrong without Baruch HaMavdil. But Lefi, what we were saying, it's not true. It's not wrong. As long as you're not doing malachas like Bishul or Afiyah, Hachana is mutter when this man already came. We had a shayla, interesting shayla, those that don't dance on Shabbos. It's the shita of the Mechaba, the Sfardim, Kfali Raminik, and many Bnei Yeshiva will not dance on Shabbos. By Shalashudas, let's say by Sheva Brachas, they're dancing right before benching. Right after benching. But it's after this man already. It's way after Beinu Tam's man. So this, Rabbi Yisai, could be the same Yisai that we said earlier. The Chazal did not answer these shvusim after this man. And the biggest raya, as we'll soon see, there's an issa of Uvda D'Choyel that's mutter when this man comes. Which Uvda D'Choyel is mutter and the meaning of Chol Tvutas Yisrael. If you look in the Rav and Tov Reish Chav Gimel, Sif Yud Aleph, blowing shofar on Yom Kippur, we do, even though Tkiyah Shofar is the Chachmei Malacha, but it's an Uvda D'Choyel, which is a very serious issa. And yet the Rav says the minig is to do it, and we'll soon see without Baruch HaMavdim and Kodesh D'Choyel. Why? So the Rav says Chazal didn't asa these type of shvusim once this man came. So this would explain why any shvus like dancing, hachana, and other type of shvusim like that would be mutter to do after this man, even without Baruch HaMavdil. Now I'll say, so why don't you just be a frumma and say Baruch HaMavdil? So why is that from? Imagine about the cake, before he says Baruch HaMavdil, Matzah Yom Kippur, he says Baruch HaMavdil. So then for the tzibur, it's not a Yom Kippur Tkiyah. So I looked around, and I will soon see, it seems clear you should not say Baruch HaMavdil. If someone knows a different meaning, I'd like to hear it. But what's interesting is that there's one problem I had with this concept, one issue Rabbanan that we are makbid, even though this man came. The Magen Avram in Reish Tzadik Daled, in the beginning, quotes Yerushalmi that the reason why we stick in Atochain Antanu in the very first bracha of Atochain, before we have any bakasha, because Asal L'Tvaya Tzrachav B'Shabbos. So you have to make Havdalah. So I saw the Piskei Teshuvos ask, what's the problem? You got to do a Rabbanan before Havdalah, as long as after this man. So he says, could be based on the Rashba and Aleph, Tov Shin Lam Betes, that the Issa is to do Malacha. The Issa of asking bakasha is because you might come to do Malacha, so that's more Chama. But Rabbi said that's the exception, that's not the norm. It seems that the basic halacha is when this man came, it's mutter to do those type of shvusim that don't involve malacha. There's a minig Yisrael based on a maril in the minhagim to fold a talis on Motzei Shabbos. The Magen Avram and Simon Shin, the Mishnah Berurah, the end of Reish Tzadik Tes, quotes this minig. Question is, when do you fold the talis? Before Ma'ariv, after Havdalah? So it makes sense that since folding a talis, if it's asa, is asa al tikkun mana, so that's already malacha. So you should really wait until after Havdalah. Okay, some have a minute to do it before Havdalah. I guess they rely on atachay natanu. That's also a good timat malacha. But I want to mention, I guess it's a mitzvah lefarsim. I heard this b'shem Rabitzel from Psheversk, and Rav Steinman said the same thing, that today, we know that you fold the talis at school of a shalom bayis. But today it doesn't seem to work. Because you have to have part 2 of the skula. After folding a talis, you fold up your shirt sleeves and you wash the dishes. So then that's the complete school, and that works guaranteed. Next question, someone had a headache by Shalashudis, and Pashadi doesn't want to take pain relief because it's also. Can he take it after the Zman? The answer is yes. Does he have to say Baruch HaMavdil before? The answer is no. You want to still say Ritzei and Benching, you want to keep Shabbos. What's the chilik? Once the Zman came, it's only a Shavuos, it's mutter without Baruch HaMavdil. Ma'is Shahaya, there was someone told me he's in a hotel and they ran out of hot water on Shabbos. They had a very long late Shalashudis, and all of a sudden they're serving hot water. So he asked them where they come from. So he says, there was a waiter, grabbed a fry, but a yid, he knew the Zmanim. So right after the Zman, he cooked hot water. Is there a Ma'is Shabbos when a fry yid cooked water after the Zman? So the answer is, even though he didn't say Baruch HaMavdil presumably, but Ma'aser Shabbos is only in Issa Darbanon and Ken Zayin. Since a Yid could do Malacha, then technically Shabbos is over. So without the Rif Shita, it would not be awesome. So at least another Yid could have Hano. Question, someone sitting by Shalashudis, relishing every moment of Ma'achri and Lotzeis, but another person already made Havdalah. He's Maran Lotzeis. Can the person that's in full Shabbos gear ask someone that already made Havdalah to Malacha for him? So this sounds familiar. Isn't it the same like someone that made early Shabbos could ask someone, could someone that did not make early Shabbos, someone that made early Shabbos could ask someone who didn't to do Malacha for him? And that, as you know, is a big machlekes. We paskin is mutter. So the same thing by Gabi have mutter Shabbos? The answer is no. If you look at the Lashon in the end of Reish Samach Gimel, the Shulchan Aruch says Shabbos is Erev Shabbos is mutter, but Matzoi Shabbos Kol Shkein is mutter. Why is Kol Shkein? Why is Matzoi Shabbos better than Erev Shabbos? So the Mishnah Berurah is beautiful, because if I made early Shabbos, for me it's Shabbos. I can't ever exit Shabbos. But Matzoi Shabbos, even though I'm keeping extra Shabbos, I could say magical words Baruch HaMavdil, and then I could do Malacha. So it's more pasha that I could ask someone on Matzoi Shabbos to do Malacha for me than on Erev Shabbos. What's interesting is the Levush is one of those that are machmed that I'm keeping extra Shabbos cannot ask my neighbor who already made Havdalah to do Malacha for me. And his reason is because it's still Shabbos. So the Taz, the end of Reish Samach Gimel, I don't know where the Levush is coming from. Once the Zman came, it's Shabbos is over. That's like we said earlier, because it seems that once this man came, Shabbos is over. You want to keep extra, that's your personal maila, but that doesn't mean you can't ask someone else to do Malacha for you. Someone asked me a beautiful question. He heard about, we once mentioned this, that some hold that it's always kedai to push off Shabbos as long as you can. Last night there was a Minig Yisrael that first we light Ner Chanukah, and then you make Havdalah. Why? Keep Kedusha Shabbos. You already said Havdalah in Shemoneh Esrei, but there's still a Kedusha Shabbos after Havdalah. So this Erlich HaBacha said he's in yeshiva, he wants to daven Ma'ariv, and then he will learn for 2 hours, and then I'll make Havdalah. I said, what are you doing? Why do that? Want to be Yotze D'Olam? I want to keep Shabbos 2 extra hours. So I said, wait a minute. Where are you going to get the wine from? If you have to break into the kitchen to steal the wine, then it's not kedai. He said, no, I have wine, no problem. So he wants to keep Shabbos 2 extra hours. So it's a beautiful art. The question is, if he's going to write notes, he's going to sit and learn, he's going to write. So according to the Rif and Harbi Rishonim, that's awesome. It's awesome to Malacha until Havdalah Alakais. So now it's a question of priorities. Light Rashi, it's Kula Himayla. He has extra Shabbos, Kedusha Shabbos. Light the Rif, it's awesome. So you have to know, is it Kedai? Mitzad Echad, it's a Maila, B'sashen like the Rif and Har B'Shainim, it's wrong. So the emes is, you'll say, well, maybe like Rabbi Yerucham, you're allowed to write notes, because writing is not a malacha kaveda. But it's not true. Rabbi Yerucham gives an example of malacha that's also writing. So here you have to know a sense of priorities. You know, is it kedai al reach kedushas nishma Shabbos to do what's also like the Rif and other Rishonim? A very intriguing question, and something to really think about. Because every single Motzei Shabbos, we learned, and that's the halacha, according to Rashi and the Shulchan Aruch, if you say Baruch HaMavdil, you could do malacha. Can I eat after Baruch HaMavdil? The answer is no. I can't eat until I make Havdalah proper. My question is, Ma nishtana? If Baruch HaMavdil helps for malacha, why doesn't it help for Issa? For Issa Achila? So you'll say it doesn't. That's the question. What's the chiluk? So I'll answer the question with a different question. Also an intriguing question. You're not allowed to eat before a mitzvah, certainly mitzvah deraisa, but te'ima is mutter. A classic example, many places they eat before Tkiyah Shaifa. Hopefully they keep it down to te'ima, but te'ima before deraisa is mutter. So why can't I chap a coffee before Ma'ariv on Shabbos, which is before Kiddush? Te'ima is mutter before mitzvah deraisa, so why can te'ima be mutter before Kiddush? Ever think of that question? So the only answer is because there's a different issa eating before Kiddush. You look in the Magen Avram and Reish Lamed Hey, Sif Kot and Daled, Rav Sternbuch, Me'ad Mazman, and Gimel Reish Lamed explains it very nicely, that the issa of eating before Kiddush and Havdalah is not just before a mitzvah. Part of Kavod Shabbos is the first achila is only after Kiddush. Part of Kavod Shabbos is the first malacha / achila is only after Havdalah. I guess I could use the lashon Yikud the Shabbos, that Shabbos starts everything. Shabbos ends everything. So there's a special din, don't eat before Kiddush and don't eat before Havdalah. Oy bazoi, Baruch HaMavdil, it's only a heka, will not work for eating before Havdalah. And that, Ladaiti, is the only hezbollah why you're not allowed to eat before Havdalah. Lagabi malacha, since Shabbos is over already, just you need a certain type of heka, Baruch HaMavdil is enough. But Lagabi achila, the yikud, the Shabbat is don't eat anything before Kiddush, even water, and don't eat anything before Havdalah, and the heka ba'alma will not help. This is basically will answer that big question. Someone had a long shalashuddis, okay, and he went beyond his man. Can he still say ritzei in benching? It's way after Beinu Tam's man already. So for us, we have two reasons why he could. Number one, who cares if this man is over? I want to keep Shabbos. I have Tosefes Shabbos. I could say ritzei. But the interesting thing is the Poskim in the end of Kuf Peiches have a different reason. Basically, even though this man is over, but you ate on Shabbos. So there was a chalois chiyah b'shas di achila, and indeed you're allowed to say ritzei even though it's much later. But l'didan, you don't have to come on to that. The fact is that since you're keeping Shabbos longer, it's still Shabbos. Okay. Some have a minig that Nashim do not do malacha on Motzei Shabbos. Now, that has nothing to do with Shabbos. The Magen Avram and Sifkat and Tezvav quotes this minig, and it was matmiya on it, and the Sif Chaim, the Aruch HaShulchan say it's no such a minig, it's a minig tois. But the emes is, the Magen Avram himself quotes the Abu Draham, that there is such a minig that women don't do malacha against Motzei Shabbos. Okay, if your wife has that minig, fine, but it's nothing to do with Shabbos, because once you make Havdalah, the Shabbos is over. Rather, if you need laundry done, but some people, what you could do is tell the women to get the laundry, get the wash machine ready, everything is ready to go, and you'll press the button. Like by other times when there's a minig of malacha, the ik is the pressing the button. The hachana, that's not part of the is. The most common Motzei Shabbos Yom Tiv question is when the Nashim are home, they're not davening, and Yom Tiv goes from Shabbos into Sunday. Pesach was Shabbos and Sunday. So we're in shul, we're not doing malacha, we have Ma'ariv, but the women want to do malacha, preparing for the Seder night. So here we have a problem. Because again, women typically don't daven Ma'ariv, How could they start doing malacha on Matzoi Shabbos? Where's the Havdalah? Mishabbos L'Yom Tiv. And that's why the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kat Lamed Vav and Magen Avram quote my Rivayel teach the Nashim on Matzoi Shabbos Shechal Yom Tiv. They should say Hamavda Me Kodesh LeKodesh. God, someone asked, his wife said Hamavda Me Kodesh L'Chol was she Yoitza? So first you could say over Hamavda L'Chol, but the emes could be she was Yoitza, even though it's not the full Havdalah. But all you need at this point, like Rashi, is a Kera Ba'alma. Maybe it's a Kera Ba'alma. But at the end of the day, the women have to be told, Amatzoi Yom Shabbos Chal B'Yom Tov, you have to say Baruch Hamav Min Kodesh L'Choyel. Sorry. A challenging question, I saw this on Isha, forgot. Made the bracha L'Hadik Ner Shel Yom Tov, is holding the candle, and Chap, I didn't say Hamav Min Kodesh L'Kodesh. So let's freeze that scene. She didn't make any Havdalah. She made a bracha and holding a ner. Okay, she didn't like the ner. Someone gave her the ner. Where do you go from here? You can't text. You can't call a rav. Hefsik. So this is a fascinating shaila, because quickly say Baruch Hamad Min Kodesh LeKodesh is a hefsik between the bracha and the halakha. To light it might be chilul, but then again you could rely on the Ben Yeruchim that it's not a chilul because halakha's neiris is mutter. So the question is like, you say, wait a minute, maybe it's a tzorich havdalah, like Yakna has, we make gafen and we make everything else in between, no hefsik. But Yakna has is the text. This is not the text to make a Havik Yeshayamte, say Baruch HaMavda, because the Kodesh, and then light. Maybe it's like Givil Laturi, feed the animals, it's Mutter Tzorich. But if you have a Ben Yeruchim, that you'll have to light it without anything, so why are you making a hefsik? So I found the Shevet HaKasi in Vav Kufnun Gimel, says a happy medium. B'mahara Baruch HaMavdil b'machshava, and then light the neiris. I was thinking, b'derech efsha, maybe the mere fact that I made a bracha l'hadik ner shel Yom Tiv, that means it's a new day. So it's a heka no less than Baruch Hu. So maybe then, with the fact that she's mahara b'leiv, would be enough. But one thing I will say, if she did say quickly Baruch HaMavdil min Kodesh to Kodesh, we can't say it's a hefsik b'di'eved, because it could be it's a tzorich before you light to say Baruch HaMavdil. Now, setting the table on Matzah Shabbos Yom Tov, we said is mutter without Baruch HaMavdil, but the problem is cooking or lighting is a problem. Question you maybe never thought of, but it's a good question. Yom Tov is Tuesday and Wednesday, let's say. So you can't prepare on Tuesday for Wednesday. What happens? What do you have to do to start cooking on Tuesday night because it's Wednesday? How do you shift gears from Yom Tov Rishon to Yom Tov Sheni? So the answer is you don't. It automatically ends, whatever this man is. Isn't there an Havdalah between Yom Tov Rishon and Yom Tov Sheni? There isn't any Havdalah. Do you have to do something? Maybe better do nothing. We don't want mezalzel in Yom Tov Sheni. It's a different level. Yom Tov Sheni. Forget it. To make Havdalah in the two, you mean Zal Yom Tov Sheni. That's like a second-class citizen. We don't want to make an Havdalah. And I looked into this. I said, if it has to be somebody speak about it. The Buchacha mentions it Kalachiyat in our Siman at the end. You'll look at there. And the Kinyan Torah in Chelik Ches Siman Lamed. Someone wrote to him, we should start making episode Havdalah b'peh. And he says it was never done, and we're not the first to do it. But it could be the Hezbollah is also Zilzul in Yom Tov Sheni. Moving on to Hilchos Pesach. I told you earlier, the Magen Avram says you're allowed to eat chametz by the Nilas HaChag if it's after the Zman. Again, it's not advisable. It's not good for your whole prestige, your whole image. People look at you like a meshuggah. But the problem you do have besides the image is, as Mr. Brewer points out in the beginning of Tov Tzadik Aleph, if you do eat chametz and you didn't get bench, then you can't say Yalav Yavai. So I benched already. So once you bench, then you zicha can't eat because that's Havdalah. So therefore, this halach is basically not negeya on a practical level. Regarding Yemei Asvira, the Shulchan Aruch writes in Tov Pei Tes that the minig is that we in shul where they still make Havdalah, if they have such a minig, the minig is that which goes first, Havdalah or Svira? Svira is 49 days a year. Havdalah is 52 plus. So Tadir says that Havdalah should go first. But then again, if we say Svira first, we are delaying Shabbos a little longer. And Takid Magen Avram, Tov Pei Vav, Siv Kat and Tez Vav says that we first say Svira, and then Havdalah, Dafuka Yoim Ma'achrin, as much as we can. Now here, Kana ben Shoyal, what do you mean? You ready? Daven Mar B'Atachayin Antanu. But the answer is, before Havdalah ala Kois, there's still a trace of Shabbos, and that's Kedai. Another fascinating question, Motzoi Shabbos, that's Tisha B'Av. So here we have a funny problem, because you can't come to shul with big day Avelis, it's Shabbos. But then again, you're starting Ma'ariv. When's the changeover? So there are some communities that they have a later Ma'ariv on Motzoi Shabbos Tisha B'Av. The Adam says Baruch HaMavdil, changing into Tisha B'Av, and you come to shul. But the Ramah in Tovkuf Nun Gimel Siv Beis records the minhag that you come to shul with big day Shabbos, Shabbosdik. After Baruch Hu, change into, take off the shoes, and you change into big day Tisha B'Av. What is Baruch Hu making a chilik? Like we said earlier, the Baruch Hu is some type of a signal for a new day. Now, basically, those that don't do the minhag that most have of just making a later Ma'ariv, they hold how you let to push off Avelis. If it's Zman, they have to keep Tisha B'Av. But the minhag that people have is they consider Shabbos, Sefer Shabbos as a matir. It goes and they say Baruch HaMavdil, then you change Tisha B'Av clothing and you come to shul. Listen to a fascinating Yom Kippur scandal. Shoylem Meshiv, Madura Gimel, Chelik Ala Kuf Chavtes. The Shatz was davening a very long Ne'ilah, and someone was getting very thirsty. So he asked the Lamdan Echad, "Can I take a drink?" The Lamdan Echad says, "No problem, take a drink." And the Lamdan Echad also drank water, maybe to make the other fellow feel good. Someone saw this and was Mecharif Megadef. The Lamdan Echad, you eat drinking on Tisha B'Av, on Yom Kippur, what's going on here? And the Lamdan was not Moichel him for being Mecharif him. So they asked the Shalom Eshev, who's right? Shalom Eshev says, what do you mean who's right? Of course the Lamdan is right. Once it was past his man, the tinus is over. Why can't he drink? Why can't he eat? Obviously, that is before Havdalah. But he was Zichar right. But he says, listen, the Mecharif Megadef, it was a Pashta Yit, he didn't know better. He thought it's wrong. But he's wrong. So, please be Moichel him. But there's a plea. You're allowed to drink Yom Kippur before any form of Havdalah, because this man is over. Now the embassy, you look at the Mashmois, the Magen Avraham, at the beginning of Tov Reish Chav Dalid, he says, V'chitza u'v'kulam is muta by this man, koidim sheyavdil. That means even before Baruch HaMavdil, you're allowed to take a drink. And that's the pashtus of the Poskim, of the Shalom Eshev, the Steichemet, Yom Kippur, Vav Chav, you're allowed to drink. It doesn't say you have to say Baruch HaMavdil. Rab Shlomo Zalman, Alich Shlomo, Yom Kippur, Hey Mem, and Rabbi Yashiv, in Ashrei Ish, Chelik Gimel, Chav Aleph, Chav Ches, say no. You're allowed to drink, but first Baruch HaMavdil. Now Shlomo Zalman says a svar, why? Because since you're not allowed to drink a whole Yom Kippur, you can't start drinking about Baruch HaMavdil, which is a new chiddush. But I will say one thing, if a person wants to drink before hearing Havdalah, water was mutter. Now this could be negayah for the women that are waiting for the husband to come home from shul, Matzah Yom Kippur to make Havdalah. They won't make their own Havdalah, but they're very, very thirsty. We have a Shalom Eshev and other poskim, it's mutter without Havdalah, because once this man came, the tainus is over. Eating is an issa of before Havdalah, but mayim, we make it in is mutter before Havdalah. This explains the minig Yisrael. To my knowledge, it's the minig in many places, that when the Baal Tekeya blows the shofar on Matzah Yom Kippur, if it's after the Zman, he does not say Baruch HaMavdil. We have the Rav in Tov Reish Chav Gimel Yud Aleph, and I could not find anybody who says to say Baruch HaMavdil. It seems that is the fact that it's not an Issa, it's a Shvus, and once the Zman is over, you're allowed to do these Shvusim. Moving on to Ner Chanukah, this is fascinating, because in Shulchan Aruch and Tov Reish Pei Aleph, there are 2 days. What goes first, Ner Chanukah or Havdalah? And some Poskim, some Rishonim say, first Ner Chanukah and then Havdalah, to delay Shabbos as long as you can. The Minig Yisrael, I think, is Fakert. First we make Havdalah and then Ner Chanukah. The question is, what's Pshat in those Rishonim delaying Shabbos? What do you mean delaying Shabbos? You said Baruch HaMavdil, and you said Ba'atachayin Antanu. You already tzinded Chanukah lech. You did Malacha. What Shabbos remains? Zokte El Yerabba, on this sif, the mere fact that you didn't make Havdalah, his lashon is adayin nishar reyach kedushas nishma Shabbos ad Havdalah alakois. There's still some trace of Shabbos until Havdalah alakois. You ask what that means? I'll tell you what it means. The kedusha Shabbos is so tremendous that Baruch Hu, okay, let's put the Baruch Hu, Atachayin Antanu, Baruch HaMavdil, Melacha, all does not diminish the Kedusha Shabbos. There's still a trace of it until you have stage number 5 that's called a Dalal HaKois. Now, what I try to do in my house, because I don't want to change the minig ha'olam, we prepare the neiros right after Ma'ariv, then we make Havdalah, and then we light the neiros. What's the mile of that? At least we push the Havdalah to keep the Shabbos a few extra minutes preparing it, and then that's what we do. Someone asked me, but what about Eim Avin ala mitzvahs? How could you leave the Chanukah if you have it already? So that's not such a problem, because if you have to make Havdalah first, so it's not Avin ala mitzvahs, but I want to keep Shabbos as long as I can. Purim, as the minig is, and for those that make Havdalah in Shul, the Shulchan Aruch says the Ferish, in Tafrei Sad, the Gimel, you make Havdalah after the Kriyas HaMegillah to keep Shabbos as long as you can. Again, the same Yesod. One more question I must mention. Someone asked me this recently, and it's Mamash our Sugya. It was in Eretz Yisrael. He called a car service to take him from place to place on Matzoi Shabbos, and he's certain that the car driver did not say Havdalah. How does he know? Because he didn't yet make Kiddush. Rahman al-Slan, a Fraya Yid. So he's being machshel, the driver, in an Issa D'Rabbanan of Melacha before Havdalah. What's the heter? We spoke with Mamish last week. There's an Issa L'fnei by an Issa D'Rabbanan. So could be a whole shiur for itself, which is not going to be, but I want to say one point. If we understand that you can't do Melacha before Havdalah because it's an Issa of Mechilul Shabbos, then it's Takan Avlu. You can't call someone who didn't make Havdalah. But the way we explained, it's not an Issa of Chilul Shabbos. The Issa is, since you didn't do Havdalah, the Havdalah makes the Issa. So lied 1,000 times. On his horizon, there is no Havdalah. He's not making Havdalah. So he's not going to delay the Havdalah because of you. Lied, there is no Havdalah. Now, we're not sanctioning his lack of Havdalah, but he's not making Havdalah, so there's no Issa. So someone says, what you should do? At least say good vach to him. Like, how does that work? Like, good Shabbos is Kiddush, good vach is Havdalah, but that doesn't seem to sound right. Good vach is a greeting. So I told him, what you really should do? Either rely on good vach being an Akera Ba'alma, like Rashi maybe, or better yet, tell the driver, Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'cho. What do I gain with that? You have a Gemara. If you told him and he heard it, so you have Shemeya Ka'oina, and that's the last piece of our Gemara that works, the Gabi Havdalah. I couldn't talk to you all.